Okay, so we wanted to talk about 2-1 buy downs. And just
Correct.
kind of when is it good? When is it not good? Are there catches? When should a buyer use it? When should a buyer not use it? Why would you not get it?
Right.
So,
Yeah, so let's break it down for somebody that's never heard about it.
Cool.
So I have a client right now, and I always try to preface this type of conversation by saying, look, I'm not trying to build the case of why you should buy a house today if you're not ready to buy a house.
right.
But we're not doing our job if we're not advising them and giving them all of the information and then letting them make an informed decision. So
Totally.
if you have a buyer that got job transferred and they have to move, or if they just went from in-office work to in-home, remote working, and they just simply can't accommodate their current house and they have to move,
Got to get out. Right.
they could be up against a wall potentially because they might be priced out of a market, with increasing home values and rates being at 7%. And they might be like, holy cow, what are we going to do?
Right.
So advising them of this type of thing is you doing your job. So what a rate buy down looks like, it would be, I'm going to buy a house from Joe. I'm buying your house for $400,000. I have to negotiate with you for you to provide me that seller credit.
Correct. So I'm going to be factoring in if you ask me for a seller credit and you tell me it's for a buy down, to me that's better received than like we need a seller credit because we don't have enough cash.
Correct.
Right. So we need this house
Yep.
plus a $10,000 credit because if we don't have that credit, like we can't afford it.
Correct.
That's different
Yeah.
than like, hey, we want you guys to do a buy down.
Right.
And we're just factoring in this 10. Now I'm just factoring that into my math. So if it's $400K with a $10,000 credit, that's really $390 to me.
Yeah. So if my offer to you is $390, I'm going to actually give you a $400,000 offer because I'm buying the house for $390. You're giving me $10K in closing credits.
Right.
To do this rate buy down.
Exactly.
Now, if I'm going to buy it at full ask, that offer is going to be $410, and so basically now I'm just going to be burying in the cost of the rate buy down into my 30-year mortgage.
Correct.
So real quick, not to get like bogged down in numbers, but I pulled up a buy down calculator.
Yeah, sure.
And so just real quick, what it would look like over 30 years, I did a purchase price of $500,000 just for easy math.
Okay.
I think the going rate right now, if you got excellent credit, 20% down payment on a conventional mortgage is like 6.75.
Sounds right. And that's going to fluctuate over the next couple of months. It's going to be anywhere between 6.25 to 7 probably.
Yep. So purchase price $500K, 6.75% interest rate is like the going rate right now. 20% down payment, loan amounts $400,000.
Okay.
Year one. So this 2-1 buy down. So if the
it's
going rate is 6.75%, your first year it's dropping 2 percentage points, which is a lot. So your
Correct.
first year you're going to be at a 4.75% rate instead of 6.75.
Right.
Your year two then goes up 1 percentage point to 5.75, and then at the year three for the rest of the mortgage it goes up to the going rate, which in this scenario we're talking 6.75.
Right.
So what that means for you is in year one, you are saving, in this situation that I, plugged in here, $500K,
Yep.
you're saving yourself $500 a month.
Okay.
Year two, you are saving yourself $260 a month. And then year three, it goes up to the normal amount, which would
$260 savings?
yes, correct.
Okay.
So your payment in year one is
That's interesting. I would think it would be like
500
500
lower.
and then 250.
It's I mean I'm like kind of rounding here, but yeah,
Sure.
$500 a month less your first year.
Okay.
$260 a month less your second year, and then it goes back up to the normal rate. Now, let's talk about what that means for you if the interest rates fall over the course of 3 years.
So the benefit, so you can try to, first of all, like you could always do this program, but the reason that this is beneficial now is because there is anticipation that we're all kind of acknowledging that we're in some like crap storm here.
Yep.
And that it's eventually going to be better.
Correct.
So as rates come down over the next year or two, or even if it's 3 or 4 years later, we are anticipating rates not being at 7 forever. So the reason this is good is because the money that you asked, there's 2 reasons this is good. So in your scenario, right, I'm just going to round the numbers to make it easy. $500 a month, $250 a month in savings. That's $6,000 in the first year, $3,000 in the second year.
Yep.
Okay. That's $9,000 of savings over those 2 years. That's exactly how much it's going to cost to get the buy down. So you're asking for a $9,000, whatever the exact cost of the buy down is, you're asking for that from the seller. And so that money then goes into an escrow account. So this is where I just like knowing this, because the bank seems so nice. It's like, oh, we'll give you a 2% break.
And it's worth talking about because
give you a
the
1% break.
Yeah, the bank isn't giving you a break. The bank is still going to get their own.
They're just getting their payment on the front end.
Correct.
So this goes into an account.
Yep.
So now instead of your payment being, let's say it was going to be $2,000 and you're saving $500 a month.
Yeah.
So instead of your payment being $2,000, it's now $1,500. Well, the bank is just taking the $500 you're saving out of that $9,000 account.
Correct. You can think of it as like a subsidy. Yep,
yeah,
exactly. So you buy this rate buy down for $10K. Now you're saving yourself. Yeah. Now you're saving your monthly payments $500 a month lower. They're going to be subsidizing that out of that from the $10K, account, which is in an escrow account.
Right. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I do like to know that the bank isn't the nice guy here.
Correct.
They're winning. Okay. They're still getting their 7% or what, 6.75. The only good thing about that is the money that goes into that account is technically yours. And so if the rates go from 6.75 when you bought today, even though you're only paying 4.75, right? That's great. But if the rates drop on their own to 5, right? You can potentially refinance to 5.
And then you're out of that
keep whatever
program.
That money is in that account, and you're no longer in the 2-1 buy down, and now you get your $9,000 back or $8,000 back or whatever they haven't used, right? You get that all back. Or if the refi costs $1,000, they can pull out of that account to pay for it. So essentially, you're not adding more cost to a new thing you have to pay for.
Yeah, you can use that to cover your closing.
Yeah, so I think it's a really good program because it the sellers are paying for it. It goes into an account. You can get that money back if the rates go down by themselves, which that's the bad part about a permanent buy down. Right? Because those, first of all, they're way more expensive. Like $8,000 or $9,000 is only going to save you maybe 1%, probably 0.75% at the most. So those get really expensive, and then you just spent $9,000 buying the rate from 6.75 to 6, and then they go down to 5.75 in 6 months from now, and you just wasted $8,000, $9,000 on a permanent buy down.
I think there are some situations where it might make sense to buy like a point, but I have a client that I'm working with right now.
But they didn't save a point, and it was going to cost them 2% of, they call it points, right? So it was going to cost them 2 points, 2% of their mortgage to get what, like 0.5% off or 0.75% off?
Yeah. So the scenario that my client's up against right now is we're looking for a house, and they reached out to their lender because we found a house that they like. Yeah. And he's like, hey, what's the going rate today? And so he said, and this was a few days ago, it always fluctuates, but he said on a FHA, I believe he said the going rate today was like 7.125, something like that. Okay. He could buy down 1 point to get it down to like 6.8.
Right. So what price point are we talking about?
We're talking like $450 ballpark.
Okay, so $4,000.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, one point is 1% of the purchase price. So
or the loan. I think.
At closing, if he's buying it $450, $4,500 is going to buy you 1 point. So that's going to drop your rate.
It's going to cost you 1 point. But how far is your rate going?
I'm sorry. Yep, but his rate's going to go from like a 7.125 to like 6.8.
Yeah, so not even half.
Right.
So a quarter of a point.
See, and this is like kind of, now we're talking about like a lender can get into this stuff and like really break it down, what it all means for them. But I do think that there is a time and a place for a rate buy down. I just don't see, he offered up like as much as like 2 points, and I'm like, you're not paying $9,000 out of your pocket.
That goes down to what? 7.125 down to 6.8 down to like
6.5. So now you're talking like pretty close to like 0.75 of a point, which is substantial. However, in my client's case, they're not looking at a 30-year home. They're looking at like a 5 to 7 year home, and then they're planning to move out of state. And
so this is where the lender helps, because they can literally do the math for you and say, all right, you're spending $9,000. Yep. This is what you're saving. Yeah. It's going to take you X amount of years to make up for that $9,000 that you're saving.
Correct.
Right. So would it be better just to pay a higher interest rate and not spend this $9,000.
Yep.
So if you're going to stay longer, obviously the math gets better. But what I hate right now in the scenario we're in, because again, we all know that this is like a weird situation with inflation and everything that's been going on. We don't anticipate it being a long-term thing. So if you spend $9,000 to go from 7.1 to 6.5, and even if you're saving 0.75%, it costs you $9,000, and then they just drop by themselves a year from now.
Yes.
Like your 9,000's gone. Where if you do a 2-1 buy down, not only are you using that same $9,000 to go from, let's say, 7.125 down to 5.125.
Yep.
Right? If the rates go down by themselves, you can refi and get whatever money's left in that account.
Yep.
So I like that the money's not gone. I like that the discount's heavy. It's not permanent though, right? So the bank isn't really doing you any favors, so don't forget that. But I do like the program. The other caveat that I learned is that the bank, the actual 2% discount, it's not quite 2%. It's
they take like an 1/8%.
Yeah. So again, the bank's not really being nice, but it helps you in general.
So we're talking like if I buy a house, 30-year conventional mortgage right now, and my rate is 7.125,
or let's just say
7%, it would actually be in a rate buy down. It would be like
5.125.
Yes, exactly.
That's what your actual rate would be.
Yeah.
So they round
not 5,
up to 2.
It's 5.125.
Yeah. So they're making an eighth on the discount. So they're charging you what it would cost to get a full 2%.
Yeah.
But they're not actually giving you that full 2% discount.
Correct.
So they're making an 1/8% for those 2 years profit. Plus they're getting their full 7% anyway. So it's actually more beneficial for the lender because it's like they're getting 7.125 on a 7.
Yeah.
Which is fine. In this program, it's like the cost of you saving money.
What I like about this program, though, is like there's a lot of people that have been priced out of the market. You know, we're talking like first-time home buyers that can't afford now. Well, also rent's going up. So now they're having a hard time affording rent, and they're having a hard time buying. You have a ton of buyers that were out last June that were competing against multiple offer scenarios in every house that they tried to acquire. And they got frustrated. And so like one of the common things that I hear...
It's tough, man.
Yeah, so and anybody in real estate hears it where they're like, oh, we're going to wait for the market to come down. And it's like,
don't know.
This is where the salesy things comes in. I don't want to sound salesy when I say this, but like there's no indication that there's going to be a substantial drop. And so like, though we might see home values coming down ever so slightly, we're talking like 1%, not 10%.
Right. I think we just missed it. Like I think that was August to December. That was the time to try to like, you know, for lack of a better term, lowball people and try to like get something and maybe save yourself some money or get into a place where you can actually afford it. Yeah. But now there's still just so many buyers, man.
Yeah.
So many.
Well, exactly. So the point that I was making is that all those buyers are still out there. I was showing a client a house a couple days ago, and this house was new to the market that day. We saw it day one, it hit the market, and I'm not exaggerating when I say there was 10 other couples inside this house at the same time that we were looking at it.
I know, and then
10.
I called.
It was like a frenzy. There was like a traffic jam in the street,
which is last year and 2 years ago.
Yeah,
that's how it was.
So all those buyers that were having a hard time a year ago because they were competing against multiple offers, they still exist. They're still out there in the world.
It's just because that house was priced right?
And but there's a lot of people that are having a hard time buying right now with rates being what they are. So I do like this 2-1 buy down. That's like why I started kind of exploring what it is, and I'm like frantically seeking all the downfalls to it because I want to advise my clients and say like, look, it's good for this and this reason, but it's not good for these. And I'm just finding that there's a lot of upside to a 2-1 buy down, and there's not much downside. You're talking like that extra 8%.
I was gonna say I think that there really isn't a downside to the buyer. But correct. I don't like bait and switches or like I don't like when it's not a full picture, right? So we're getting, I don't know if you got this last year. I'm not getting this as much anymore, but I started to get emails from lenders, ones that I work with and the ones that I don't, that just have our emails because we're realtors. And I started getting emails like 2-1 buy downs, 2-1 buy down. And it was like, what the heck's going on with this 2-1 buy down? Like, where's this coming from? And why are they pushing it?
Sounds salesy.
There's like, like, what's going on here?
Yes.
There's got to be some catch. Yeah. There really isn't a catch for the buyer. But the lender is actually making more than they would. So even though rates are 7%, they're gonna get you to pay from the seller exactly what you would save at a 2% discount. and then they're going to charge you an eighth higher. So they're actually getting an eighth more than 7. So they make more money than
You're talking about the lender is actually going to make.
The lender's actually making an eighth more than 7%.
Correct. Yeah.
They got the money to save you on 2, and they're charging you a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
So they're going to make 7,125, even though you're only paying for 5,125.
Yep.
Right. So again, it's really good for the buyer. The other catch too, not catch, but you got to be careful, is the buyers do have to qualify for the higher rate.
Right.
So if they don't qualify for that, the 2-1 buy down's not going to help them. But it will help somebody who's like, man, we can afford this.
Yep.
We just don't want to. We don't want our payment to be $4,000. It's like, all right, well, let's have your payment be $3,250 or $35 or whatever the savings are. You can afford the $4,000. We know you don't want to, so let's hope that in the next 2 years, things come down below what you would be paying.
Yep.
And at least for these 2 years, you'll be at $3,500, then you'll be at $3,750, and then by then, hopefully rates will come down.
Yeah, and that goes back to like not trying to build the case why somebody should buy a house, because obviously we make
because 2 years from now it could be 7% still, so we don't want you banking on that.
Correct.
But it will alleviate a burden for a little while.
Yeah. So like, I think there's like a common misnomer, and maybe there are people that go about their real estate profession differently and want to close that transaction and I know. Go figure. They exist. What I'm getting at is I don't care about closing the real estate transaction just to collect a commission. I want to build a relationship with that client that is going to carry me through the next 20 years. They are going to call me every time they have a real estate need. When their family or their friends need to buy or sell real estate, like those are the relationships that I'm trying to build. And so by investigating this type of thing and finding the pros and the cons and just saying, look, this is what it is. It exists.
Right.
Buying right now might not be for you. 7% rate. I can't look you in the face and say, this is the time to buy for everybody, right?
Forever.
But people do have needs. And so if they need to do it, this makes it more affordable for them.
For sure. At least for a couple of years. We can't guarantee that it'll come down. We think it will, but we can't guarantee it.
Right.
But yeah, so at least for a couple of years, the burden's been lifted a little.
Yep.
And you save a little bit of money on the seller's dime. So I guess that's the other thing is like, if you're competing with offers, I think you got to make it clear that the credit you're asking for is for a buy down, not because they need it financially, so that you can at least compete with other people. And they could still be putting down 20%.
Yeah.
So you can still buy it at 410, even though it's listed at 4 or 409, let's say, and ask for the 2-1 buy down and put down 20% still.
Exactly. It's not like we're asking for anything. That's
going
to be our money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're selling for 500 and you want a full ask offer, I can still give you that full ask offer plus 10. So now you're getting 510, 509.
20% down, right.
Exactly. So it doesn't have to be looked at as a negative from the seller's side.
Totally.
You can still offer them what they want to make them happy. But like you said, not to beat it with a dead horse, but there's a difference between somebody who can afford the house and they want that credit to make their month-to-month more comfortable,
easy,
versus somebody who can't really afford to buy that house and they need a credit to cover their closing costs.
Right.
So a strong buyer can still request that credit and
compete.
Correct.
Yep. I think that's good.
Yeah.
All right, man. That's the 2-1 buy down.
All right.
Thanks for watching. Later.
Thanks, guys.